The Oak Ridge courthouse loomed like a cathedral of injustice, its marble columns casting long shadows across Darnell Brooks's face as he climbed the steps. 20 years of honest work, a spotless record, and now this, accused of a petty theft he didn't commit. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his borrowed tie. Inside, Judge Samuel Whitaker's reputation filled the courtroom before he entered. Known for his tough-on-crime stance, particularly when defendants looked like Darnell. The gallery whispered and shifted, mostly white faces stealing glances at the lone black defendant. Sophia Martinez noticed these details from the back row. A decade as a public defender had taught her to read rooms like this, to spot the subtle choreography of prejudice. She watched Darnell's court-appointed lawyer shuffle papers without making eye contact with his client. Classic signs of a rush plea deal in the making. The evidence against Darnell was circumstantial at best. He'd been near the convenience store when it was robbed, wearing similar clothes to the perpetrator. But in Oak Ridge, proximity while black often equaled guilt. Judge Whitaker's entrance silenced the room. His black robe seemed to absorb light, his presence commanding immediate deference. But Sophia caught something in his expression. A flicker of satisfaction, too eager for simple justice. During the preliminary hearing, a pattern emerged. The prosecutor's weak case strengthened mysteriously after private conferences in Whitaker's chambers. Key evidence about another suspect vanished from police reports. The system wasn't just biased. It was actively coordinating against Darnell. In his holding cell, Darnell relived the night in question. He'd been walking home from his second job, taking the route he always took. The store owner had even waved to him minutes before the robbery. But that same owner now claimed he couldn't be sure, couldn't remember, didn't want to get involved. Sophia's research revealed deeper connections. Judge Whitaker's recent rulings favored development projects by Maxwell Industries, owned by his old college roommate. The same company eyeing Darnell's neighborhood for urban renewal. The prosecution offered a plea deal: admit guilt, pay a fine, serve probation. Best outcome for someone like you, Darnell's appointed lawyer advised. The implied threat hung heavy: fight this, and Judge Whitaker would make an example of him. But something in Darnell refused to bend. His father had taught him that dignity, once surrendered, was hard to reclaim. When Sophia approached him after the hearing, offering to take his case pro bono, he recognized the same determination in her eyes. "They're using you," she explained quietly. "This case, it's not about a robbery. It's about power, about who gets to write the story of this town." Darnell thought about his teenage daughter, how she watched him navigate white spaces with careful precision. How would he face her if he pleaded guilty to a lie? "I want to fight," he told Sophia. "Not just for me." Neither of them knew then how deep the corruption went, how their search for justice would unravel decades of carefully maintained oppression. But in that moment, looking at the courthouse's imposing facade, they both felt the weight of what was coming. Sophia's investigation started with public records, but quickly revealed a pattern. Judge Whitaker's harsh sentences for minor offenses correlated perfectly with Maxwell Industries' property acquisitions. Areas marked for development saw increased police presence, higher arrest rates, and forced relocations through selective code enforcement. Darnell's case fit the pattern. His neighborhood, Oak Ridge Gardens, was next on Maxwell's list. The convenience store robbery provided perfect cover. Paint the area as crime-ridden, justify aggressive policing, drive down property values. Working late nights after her regular cases, Sophia built a timeline. She discovered other defendants like Darnell, honest people whose convictions benefited Maxwell's expansion. Many had taken plea deals, crushed by a system designed to exhaust them. Meanwhile, Darnell faced mounting pressure. His employer, despite years of loyal service, placed him on unpaid leave. Anonymous calls threatened his daughter at school. Even his church, usually a sanctuary, seemed divided about supporting him. But resistance emerged from unexpected places. The convenience store's night janitor contacted Sophia, revealing security footage that had been misplaced by police. It showed someone else entirely, a white man in similar clothes to Darnell's, committing the robbery. The real breakthrough came from Judge Whitaker's former clerk, Sarah Chun. She kept detailed notes about irregular meetings, altered documents, and suspicious phone calls. Her conscience had finally outweighed her fear. He has a system, Sarah explained in a whispered coffee shop meeting. Cases that matter to Maxwell get special handling. Evidence disappears. Witnesses change statements. Defendants take deals they shouldn't have to take. Sophia and Darnell worked methodically, mapping connections between Whitaker's rulings and Maxwell's profits. They found shell companies, offshore accounts, and a web of influence touching every level of Oak Ridge's power structure. The investigation took its toll. Sophia's other clients suffered as colleagues labeled her a troublemaker. Darnell's savings dwindled. His daughter came home crying about racist graffiti on her locker. But each obstacle strengthened their resolve. They discovered others affected by the corruption. Small business owners forced out, families displaced, lives disrupted for profit disguised as progress. A turning point came when they located Maxwell Industries' former accountant. Terminal cancer had left him with nothing to lose and a desire to clear his conscience. He provided documents showing direct payments from Maxwell to accounts controlled by Judge Whitaker's wife. The evidence was mounting, but so were the stakes. Sophia's office was broken into, case files scattered but nothing stolen, a warning. Darnell noticed cars following him home from work. Even Sarah Chun reported threatening calls. They needed a strategy that wouldn't just win Darnell's case, but would expose the entire system. The corruption in Oak Ridge wasn't just about one judge or one company. It was about power's ability to wear down resistance through 1,000 small injustices. As they prepared for trial, Darnell and Sophia realized they weren't just fighting a case anymore. They were challenging a narrative about who deserved justice, who belonged in Oak Ridge, and who got to decide. The trial began on a sweltering Monday, the courthouse steps crowded with media drawn by rumors of corruption. Judge Whitaker presided with practiced indifference, but Sophia noticed his fingers drumming against the bench, a nervous tell Sarah had mentioned. Sophia's opening statement reframed the narrative. This wasn't about a simple robbery. It was about power using law as a weapon. She projected photos of other defendants caught in Whitaker's web, their faces telling a story of systematic oppression. The prosecution's case showed early cracks. Their star witness, the store owner, stumbled under cross-examination. Sophia produced records of his meetings with Maxwell Industries representatives days before changing his story about Darnell. Judge Whitaker grew increasingly agitated as Sophia methodically connected dots. His rulings became erratic, sustaining obvious objections, overruling clear precedent. Each mistake strengthened their eventual appeal case. During a crucial testimony about the security footage, Whitaker called an unexpected recess. Sophia and Darnell used the break to review their strategy in a small conference room. "He's scared," Sophia observed. "But that makes him dangerous." Darnell nodded, thinking of his daughter in the gallery, watching justice unfold or unravel. "We've come too far to back down now." The afternoon brought Maxwell Industries' CEO himself to the courthouse. His whispered conference with Whitaker in chambers violated numerous protocols, exactly as they'd hoped. Sophia called Sarah Chun to testify. Despite visible terror, she detailed years of watching Whitaker corrupt justice for profit. The gallery sat stunned as she described specific cases, dates, dollar amounts. The prosecution tried discrediting her, suggesting bitter ex-employee syndrome. But Sophia produced Sarah's meticulously kept records, each incident documented and cross-referenced. The climax came when Sophia played the security footage, not just of the robbery, but of subsequent visits by Maxwell's security team, removing evidence, pressuring witnesses. The real perpetrator's face was clear, a known associate of Maxwell Industries. Judge Whitaker attempted to rule the video inadmissible, but Sophia was prepared. She had already submitted it to state and federal authorities. Reporters in the gallery were live streaming. The truth was beyond containment. As realization dawned on Whitaker's face, his mask of judicial impartiality cracked. He began a rambling defense of his actions, claiming he'd acted for the city's good, that sometimes progress required sacrifice. "Whose sacrifice, Your Honor?" Darnell stood, addressing the court directly. "How many lives have you traded for your friend's profit? How many families displaced, dreams deferred, future stolen. The courtroom fell silent. In that moment, power shifted. Whitaker's authority, built on centuries of assumed supremacy, collided with the undeniable humanity of those he'd wronged. Federal marshals entered quietly as Sophia presented financial records showing Whitaker's corruption. The judge recognized the end was near. In a final act of defiance, he tried to declare a mistrial. The fallout from Darnell's case transformed Oak Ridge. Judge Whitaker's arrest made national headlines, sparking investigations into similar patterns of corruption nationwide. Maxwell Industries' stock plummeted as more evidence emerged of their systematic exploitation of vulnerable communities. Darnell's exoneration came with a formal apology from the city council. The convenience store owner, freed from pressure, admitted to being coerced into false testimony. The real perpetrator confessed, revealing a complex scheme to destabilize neighborhoods marked for development. Sophia's law practice evolved into a civil rights foundation, helping other communities fight systematic corruption. She hired Sarah Chun as lead investigator, their partnership uncovering similar cases across the state. Darnell emerged as a community leader, turning his experience into advocacy. He established a support network for families facing legal persecution, ensuring no one had to fight alone. The courthouse itself underwent transformation. A civilian oversight committee was established, monitoring judicial conduct and development decisions. Property owners in Oak Ridge Gardens formed a cooperative, protecting their neighborhood from predatory acquisition. Maxwell's CEO faced federal charges, his testimony exposing a nationwide network of corrupt officials and exploitative development practices. The company's assets were seized, with a significant portion allocated to community restoration. Darnell's daughter, inspired by their fight, decided to study law. She interned with Sophia, bringing fresh perspective to cases involving systemic discrimination. The media attention brought other stories to light. Across Oak Ridge, people began speaking out about similar experiences. Selective enforcement, coerced pleas, manufactured charges. Each revelation strengthened the movement for reform. City council meetings, once perfunctory rubber stamps for development plans, became forums for genuine community input. The power structure that had protected corruption for generations faced unprecedented scrutiny. Sophia and Darnell continued working together, their partnership symbolizing the possibility of genuine allyship in the fight for justice. They developed training programs for law enforcement and judiciary, teaching about implicit bias and systemic racism. The convenience store, rather than closing, became a community hub. Its new owner, supported by local investment, transformed it into a space for neighborhood meetings and youth programs. Oak Ridge's transformation wasn't immediate or complete, but the changes were undeniable. New policies required transparency in development decisions. Police reforms emphasized community service over enforcement. The courts instituted checks against judicial overreach. Most importantly, people felt empowered to challenge injustice. Darnell's stand against corruption showed that resistance, though costly, could succeed. His story became part of Oak Ridge's curriculum, teaching future generations about courage, justice, and the power of truth.